Welcome back to. What if I told you that one small Lincoln penny from 1967 could be sitting in an old coin jar right now, looking completely ordinary, while hiding a detail that collectors would immediately want to investigate? Most people see a penny, check the date for a second, and throw it back into their change. But here at Hardest Penny, we believe every old coin deserves a closer look. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the 1967 Lincoln penny, a coin that may be common in ordinary condition, but becomes much more fascinating when you understand its history, design, condition, errors, varieties, and the features serious collectors search for. 1967 Lincoln Penny. The 1967 Lincoln Penny is part of the famous Lincoln Memorial Cent series. On the front of the coin, you can see the portrait of Abraham Lincoln facing right. Above his head is the inscription, "In God We Trust." To the left is the word liberty, while the date 1967 appears on the right side of the portrait. Turn the coin over, and you will see the Lincoln Memorial. Above the building is E Pluribus Unum, while United States of America appears around the upper portion of the reverse. At the bottom is the denomination, 1 cent. At first glance, this looks like an ordinary penny, but 1967 was an interesting year in American coin production. The United States was experiencing a serious shortage of circulating coins during the 1960s. People were saving coins, the demand for coinage was increasing, and the mint was producing enormous quantities to keep enough coins in circulation. The government even made changes to coin production and mint marking practices during this period. One important fact about the 1967 Lincoln cent is that it does not have a mint mark. If you look underneath the date and don't see a small letter, don't immediately think you've found an error. The absence of a mint mark on a 1967 penny is normal. That is one of the first lessons every beginner should learn. Sometimes what looks like a missing feature is actually part of the original design and production policy. So if the lack of a mint mark isn't what makes this coin interesting, what should you look for? The first thing is condition. Condition can make an enormous difference in the desirability of a coin. A heavily circulated 1967 penny may have scratches, worn details, dark surfaces, and signs of decades of handling. A well-preserved example can look completely different. Look closely at Lincoln's cheek, jaw, hair, and coat. These areas can show wear. On the reverse, examine the Lincoln Memorial and especially the columns and architectural details. A sharp strike with strong details can make a coin much more attractive to collectors. You should also examine the lettering. Check Liberty, the date, "In God We Trust," and the inscriptions on the reverse. Look for unusual shapes, doubling, cracks, missing details, or other characteristics that seem different from a normal example. But there is something else you should never forget when searching for valuable pennies. Appearance can be deceptive. A coin that is extremely shiny is not automatically valuable. In fact, if someone polished or chemically cleaned the coin, that shiny appearance could actually hurt its collector value. Original surfaces are generally much more desirable. The natural color of a copper coin is also important. Collectors often describe Lincoln cents using 3 broad color categories: brown, red-brown, and red. A coin retaining strong, original reddish color, particularly in a high grade, can be more desirable than a worn brown example. Now let's talk about something that really gets coin hunters excited: mint errors. A genuine mint error can make an otherwise ordinary date much more interesting. Errors can happen during the preparation of planchets, during striking, or through problems involving dies and machinery. One example is an off-center strike. Imagine looking at your 1967 penny and seeing Lincoln's portrait shifted significantly toward one side, with an unusually large blank area on the opposite side. That could be worth investigating. Another possibility is a clipped planchet, where part of the coin's metal blank is missing before the design is struck. Genuine clips have characteristics that can help distinguish them from damage that happened after the coin left the mint. Then there are die cracks. A die crack can create a raised line or unusual ridge on the coin surface. Depending on its location and appearance, a dramatic die crack can attract collector interest. But again, not every line on an old coin is a mint error. scratches, and this is why careful examination matters. Another feature that collectors investigate is doubling. If letters, numbers, or parts of the design appear to have a secondary image, you might wonder whether the coin has a double die. But this is one area where beginners often make mistakes. Machine doubling, die deterioration, shadows, scratches, and photography can all create the illusion of doubling. A true collectible variety requires careful analysis, and significant coins are often authenticated by professional grading services. Weight is another useful clue. If you have an accurate digital scale capable of measuring small differences, weighing the coin can help determine whether something unusual may be happening. But weight alone doesn't prove rarity. Dirt, corrosion, damage, wear, or alterations can change a coin's weight. The best approach is to combine several observations: date, design, condition, color, weight, strike, and possible error characteristics. Now let's talk about value. A normal circulated 1967 Lincoln penny generally isn't a rare fortune coin simply because it carries the 1967 date. Millions of coins were produced, so collectors should be realistic. However, exceptional coins can be a completely different story. High-grade examples with strong, original surfaces and attractive color can command premiums. Genuine mint errors and unusual varieties can also be worth more than face value. The exact price depends on the specific characteristics, condition, certification, and current collector demand. This is why you should be careful whenever you see an online headline claiming that every 1967 penny is worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. Usually, those claims are referring to a specific exceptional example, not every coin from that year. Think about it this way. You could have 10 1967 Lincoln pennies sitting together. 9 might be ordinary circulated examples worth little more than their face value, while 1 could have an unusual error or exceptional condition that makes it much more interesting. The difference is not necessarily the date. The difference is the coin's individual characteristics. And that's what makes coin hunting so exciting. You don't need to be holding a famous rare date to discover something interesting. Sometimes the most ordinary-looking coins deserve the closest examination. The 1967 penny also tells us something important about American history. It was produced during a period of major change in the nation's coinage system. The United States was dealing with coin shortages, changing metal costs, increasing demand, and adjustments in mint production. Every 1967 penny that survived carries a small piece of that history. Imagine that your coin was originally struck more than half a century ago. It could have passed through hundreds of hands. It might have been used to buy candy, placed in a vending machine, saved in a child's coin collection, or forgotten in an old drawer. That is what makes collecting more than just money. It is history you can hold in your hand. So if you have a 1967 Lincoln penny, take it out and inspect it carefully. Use good lighting. Don't rush. Look at both sides and then examine the edge. Check the date. Check Lincoln's portrait. Check the memorial. Check the lettering. Look for unusual doubling. Look for die cracks. Look for unusual color. And if something seems different, investigate before making a decision. Most importantly, never clean the coin. A coin that looks dirty may actually have original surfaces that collectors value. Polishing, rubbing, or using chemicals can leave permanent marks and reduce the coin's desirability. If you think you have discovered a genuine error or unusually valuable example, professional authentication can be worth considering. An expert can determine whether the feature is actually a mint-made characteristic or simply damage that occurred after production. The 1967 Lincoln penny may not be a guaranteed jackpot, but that's not what makes it fascinating. Its real appeal comes from the possibility that something unusual could be hiding in plain sight. And that is exactly why we search. Here at Hardest Penny, we don't just look at coins, we investigate them. We look beyond the date, beyond the denomination, and beyond the first impression. So the next time you see a 1967 Lincoln penny, don't immediately toss it into a jar and forget about it. Pick it up, turn it over, examine the details. Because sometimes the difference between an ordinary coin and a collector-worthy coin is just one tiny detail. And that tiny detail could be hiding right in front of you. If you enjoyed this investigation into the 1967 Lincoln penny, stay connected with Hardest Penny for more Lincoln cents, rare penny discoveries, mint errors, valuable coins, and fascinating American coin history. Remember, not every old penny is rare, but every old penny has a story. And sometimes, the smallest coin can give you the biggest surprise.